everybody, today we're going to work on the Teacup Zipper Pouch from the Feeling Festive Bella Box. I've got everything ready to go. Let's go over what we need and get started. The Feeling Festive Bella Box is still available. There'll be links below where you can buy yours. Please consider using my links when you shop Kimberbell. I get a small commission, but more importantly, it lets Kimberbell know that people are watching my videos. The Teacup Zipper Pouch instructions are on page 29. You can use a 4x4 hoop to make the handle. I'll be using a 5x7 hoop. I don't have a 4x4 hoop. And then a 5x7 hoop to make the actual zipper pouch. They do show this with the little hang tag. We're going to skip the tag today and focus solely on making the zipper pouch. I have all my fabrics already cut and prepped. If you're working with the digital version, you can pick your own fabrics. We're going to need light mesh cutaway stabilizer, wash away stabilizer, and project batting. Additional materials are a zipper, a nylon coil zipper, which is included in the actual Bella box. The leather tag, we're going to skip that part today. You will need some Kimberbell paper tape. I've read through the instructions. We'll be using quite a bit of tape today. And it does mention a fray preventative product. We'll see where we're going to use that. Sometimes I skip that step. There's a note right here at the bottom telling us to use only a nylon coil zipper for this project. We're going to sew over the zipper. We have to have that nylon coil. You don't want to use a metal zipper for this. You can damage your machine. I'll be using my curved applique scissors and my snips for this project, and I've pulled my threads. Let me show you my colors. I keep all my threads inside my leather snap tray. I have a video showing you how to embroider on the leather snap tray. I'll link that below. And this Creativity Blooms design is a free design from Kimberbell that's linked in the video for the leather snap tray. I have 4 Floriani threads and 1 Simthread. These are the colors. I have white, red, dark green, pink, and for the metallic, I'm going to try the Simthread metallic. There is a sulky metallic thread that is included in the actual Bella box, but my machine really didn't like that. I've received several recommendations for brands of metallic thread. Some of them are really expensive, so I went the budget route and I bought a mixed color set of this Simthread. I've had luck with their embroidery thread. Let's try the metallic. I have a regular 7511 machine embroidery needle. A lot of metallic threads recommend a different type of needle because the eye of the needle is bigger. I'm just going to go with this today. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll have to order special needles and change out this thread. We're going to start with the cup handle. I'm using a 5x7 hoop. I already loaded my wash away stabilizer. I'll have a link below where you can look at and purchase all of the stabilizers from Kimberbell. Let's head over to the machine. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. My files are on USB. I have my instructions in a little folding metal book stand. I'll put information about the book stand in the description box below. I've had some questions on it. If I can provide a link, I'll do that as well. Let's load the file for the handle. This can be stitched out in a 4x4 hoop if you have one available. I'm using my 5x7 hoop today. Make sure you're using wash away stabilizer. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is stitch out the handle batting placement line. It tells you to use a visible thread. I have a kind of yellowy beige thread. I'll be able to see that no problem on this stabilizer. Let's stitch that out. Once you've stitched out the placement line, take your project batting, make sure you cover the placement line, add a couple pieces of tape to hold it in place. Then we're going to stitch the tack down. We've got the handle tack down stitch. We have to trim away the extra batting that's outside of that tack down line. I've got that trimmed. If you happen to cut your stabilizer, put a piece of paper tape on the back and you can continue working on your project. The next thing we're going to stitch out is the handle placement line. Grab one piece of your handle fabric. We're going to cover that placement line that we just stitched out. I'm going to add tape on the top and the bottom. And then we need to take our hoop off our machine and put our second piece on the back. I have my front fabric in place. I'm going to flip it to the back. You want to cover the back, make sure it's right side out, and then you want to tape it in place. You can tape the corners per the instructions, add tape on the top, the bottom, and the sides. Just make sure it's taped down really well. You don't want this fabric to flip up while it's stitching. Here's the back, and here's the front. You're going to put that back on your machine and stitch out the handle tack down line. The tack down line has stitched. I want to take this off my machine and I'm going to remove the tape, trim away everything outside the tack down line, and then flip it to the back, remove the tape, and trim away everything outside the tack down line. Make sure you do both the front and the back of your project. All trimmed on the front and on the back. I'm going to put this back on my machine. The next step tells you to use red thread and to use matching thread in your bobbin. My machine manual states to only use 90 weight thread in the bobbin. I have 90 weight white thread wound on my bobbin right now. I'm going to use white thread on top instead of red. That way it will look the same on the front and the back. I'm going to stitch the handle satin outlines. Stitch out is done. Let's see how the white looks. I think that looks great. If you don't want to change your bobbin thread to match, there's nothing wrong with using white, and you'll get to see my finished product, so you'll have an idea of what the white looks like instead of the red. Let's head over to the table. You want to take your project out of your hoop. If there's any tape left, peel the tape off. If you happen to have ripped the stabilizer and you have tape between the front piece of fabric and the back piece of fabric, it's fine. Nobody's ever going to know. Let's get this out of the hoop. Trim away as much of the stabilizer as you can. I've trimmed away as much extra as I can. I have some water here and a sponge brush. The instructions show using a cotton swab. That's fine too. You just want to get rid of the extra wash away stabilizer. You could actually throw the whole thing into a bowl of water and let it sit and dissolve. You would just want to let your piece dry before you attach it to the zipper pouch. I'm going to go all the way around with my sponge brush, and if there's any extra threads like that, I want to trim those off. You can check to make sure everything's been washed away by feeling it. If there's anything left, you'll feel it. It's kind of sticky. I got everything off. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. We're going to get started on the zipper pouch. This part of the project uses a 5x7 hoop and light mesh cutaway. Get your stabilizer loaded and let's head over to the machine. Let's load our file for our Teacup Zipper Pouch. This file right here, going to go ahead and hit set and embroidery. It tells us for the first step, when we stitch out the batting placement line, to use a visible thread. I have the white thread on my machine. I'm leaving it on the machine. And then as we move through right here, a couple steps later, we switch to a neutral thread. White will be fine. Let's get started. We start by stitching out the batting placement line. Grab your batting, cover the placement line. I've got a piece of tape on there. We're going to stitch the tack down, and then after you tack it down, trim everything that's outside of the tack down line, just like we did with the handle. I got really close right there. I wasn't paying attention to where I placed my batting. Luckily, it tacked it down right on the very edge. The next step is to stitch out the zipper placement lines. It says to do this in a visible thread. I'm going to try it in the white. Let's see how it goes. Over at the table, I put down a dark cutting mat so I'm able to see these zipper placement lines a little bit easier. We want to center our zipper right side up inside the placement area with the zipper pull to the top of the hoop. My top is on the left for you. It fits just inside those stitch lines. In fact, it bumps right against the batting, which is kind of nice. Makes it easy to place. We have to tape this in a very specific spot. It says to tape it at each end, and we're covering up the batting. It says that helps our presser foot glide over the zipper, so make sure you include the batting. Now when you go to peel off this tape, it's going to be hard to take off the batting, and since this is going to be covered with fabric, if you can't peel it off without damaging the batting, I just leave it on. Make sure you cover both ends. Got this down nice and straight. Cover the batting over here. We're going to go back to the machine and we're going to stitch the tack down lines. They stitch on each side of the zipper. It says you may have to raise the presser foot to help it glide over the zipper teeth. You want to keep an eye on your machine. Let's go stitch our tack down lines. Back at the machine, I'm just going to keep my finger right here through this step. That way, after it stitches the first tack down and it moves over the zipper, if I need to stop it and raise the foot, I can. My machine had no problem at all with that. Plenty of room. I didn't have to raise the presser foot. We're going to take our hoop back over to the table. You want to remove the tape. You'll see that it did get stitched over. You might need to get your scissors and trim some of this tape. It might be stuck to the batting, so just give yourself a little bit of extra time to take the tape off. Next, you want to flip your hoop to the back, and we're going to carefully cut away the stabilizer that's inside the tack down lines we just stitched. It's going to expose the back of the zipper. My tack down lines are right here and right here. Since we're on the back side of our hoop, I want to make sure that this is going to be supported, that I'm not pushing it and messing it up. I'm going to use this wool felt mat. It's a little bit bigger than my hoop, but it'll help support the piece and keep that nice and stable. You probably just heard our parrot squawking. He's having a good day today. To get this started, I'm going to use a seam ripper. Now I'm looking at this stitch line right here. I'm just going to very carefully try and lift that stabilizer and not damage my zipper. I may actually need to put my hand underneath. Kind of gently lifting this away, and then I can get the seam ripper in through the stabilizer and not damage the zipper. Then I can set this back down nice and supported and go all the way along inside that line. I may need to do some additional trimming. Stop at the edge. I'm going to grab a pair of scissors and go this way. That looks good. I can see the zipper. I have a little bit of extra stabilizer here. I can trim it off, and if these scissors aren't going to work, I can go get snips, but they seem to be working. Trim that, go to the top, and then I need to trim the other side. We want to grab our above zipper lining fabric. That's the 1x7 piece. It says to place it right side down. This doesn't matter. It doesn't really have a right side or a wrong side. Aligned with the left edge of the zipper tape with the excess fabric to the right. Here's the left edge. The right edge has this part that slides into your machine. They're calling this the left edge. So it says to line that up with the left edge of the zipper tape. Line it up like this, so you'll see a little bit of your zipper there. And then we're going to tape it into place. It says to tape the top, bottom, and right edges in place as shown. Let me go ahead and tape that. Tape top, bottom, and right edge. Next, we're going to turn our hoop to the front. I'm going to get my little mat out of the way. Place the above zipper fabric. You've got another piece of 1x7. Now this one does have a right side and a wrong side. It says to place it right side down, aligned with the right edge of the zipper tape with the excess to the left. This is the right edge of the zipper tape, excess to the left. Before I add my tape, we're going to take a quick look at number 13. We already turned our hoop to the front. We placed our above zipper fabric right side down, aligned with the right edge of the zipper tape. Excess fabric to the left. So it shows us lining it up right here on the right, lined up right here on the right. It says tape the top, bottom, and right edges in place as shown. Here's the top. This will be the bottom. This is the left edge. If this is the right side and we're aligning on the right, they're actually taping the left edge. If we flip to the back really quick, here's where the tape is here on the back on this side. Now let's go to the front. You can see the tape here. I think they mean to tape it on the left edge. So we'll tape it like the picture. We'll line it up on the right side of the tape. We're going to add tape to the top and to the bottom. And then I'm going to add the tape right here, which is the left. This is right and this is left. We're going to go back to the machine and stitch the above zipper seam. It shows that being stitched, I believe, right here above the zipper. Let's go find out. Back at the machine, and you can see that the needle is over here on this side of the zipper. I would keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't accidentally stitch on the zipper. Let's go ahead and stitch out that above zipper seam. We're back at the table. We want to turn our hoop to the back. I'm going to grab this, make sure it's supported. We want to remove the tape. Flip the above zipper lining fabric right side up. That means it's going to flip this direction, and smooth it. Use a pressing cloth and press the fabric. I'm going to go ahead and fingernail press it, and then I'm going to take it over to my ironing board, and I'm going to give it a quick press, and I'm going to take this mat with me. If you don't have a wool pressing mat, get a hand towel or something and fold it. You want that support underneath your project. It does tell you to use a pressing cloth. I didn't, but I don't have my iron on the hottest setting, so I was really careful and press that. We have to tape that in place. We're going to flip it to the front, remove our tape, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to flip this fabric up and we're going to press it. Be careful of that zipper, and then we're going to tape it in place. We're going to go back to the machine and stitch a top stitch line. I'm looking at where I placed my tape. I really don't want to have to pick out tape. I'm going to try to get this closer to the very, very edge of the fabric. Once you've got everything taped, we're going to stitch out the above zipper top stitch line. It says to do that in white. You want to remove all of your tape. If you've got any tape underneath the stitching, just be careful as you pull that out. I've removed all of my tape. I have my hoop facing back side up. My little wool pressing mat is right here under my project for support. You want to grab your lining fabric, right side down. This doesn't really have a right side or a wrong side. A long edge of the fabric with the right edge of the zipper tape. So here's your zipper tape, left edge, right edge. The fabric should be centered over the zipper with the excess fabric to the left. Right edge of the zipper tape, centered over your project. Extra hanging to the left. We want to add some tape. Turn your project over to the front. You need your piece of front fabric. That's the 5.5 by 7 inch piece. Got this piece right here. Take the long edge, align it with the left edge of your zipper tape. So here's right edge, left edge. We want this right side down, and you'll notice that the excess is coming over in the same direction as this fabric. We want to add our tape. I'm following the pictures in the instructions where I'm placing the tape on the back and the front of the hoop. So we've got 4 pieces of tape here. We're going to go back over to the machine and stitch the below zipper seam. Double check, make sure your fabric is over to the right for both pieces, the pink here and the print. Stitch that below zipper seam. We want to turn our hoop to the back and remove the tape. We removed our tape. Going to flip it, take it over to your iron and press it. You can use a pressing cloth. And you're going to go to the front side, remove the tape, and you're going to flip it. You can use the pressing cloth if you like and press it down. And then after you have each side pressed down, like this on the back and this on the front, we're going to add tape to hold it in place. Remember when you're pressing on the back side to have something underneath it to support your hoop. I have both sides pressed. I'm going to add my tape. Going to take this back to our machine and stitch the below zipper top stitch line. The top stitch line is all stitched out. It says to turn our hoop to the back and remove the tape. Once you've removed all of your tape, we're flipping this again this direction. You'll be covering the zipper, and it says to tape that in place. Grab a few of these pieces of tape that I've been using. I use them over and over and over again until they either get so full of thread or fuzz I can't use them, or they don't stick anymore. It doesn't say anything about our tape on the front at this point. We're going to go back to the machine and we're going to stitch out the front tack down line. That's the base of the cup. For this front tack down line, it says to use a neutral thread. I've just been using white through all this. It's fine. It says to go ahead and stitch out the front tack down line. We won't be trimming, but after that stitches out, we can remove our tape. I've got a little wrinkle here. I want to make sure this is nice and smooth, and then we'll stitch our tack down. You can remove the tape, and then we're going to stitch out the outer stripe placement line. It has that in a neutral thread. I'm leaving the white thread on my machine. All my tape is removed. We're going to stitch out the outer stripe placement line. You want to grab your outer stripe fabric and make sure to cover that placement line. Once you have that tape down, stitch out the outer stripe tack down line. Once that's stitched out, we're going to trim what's on the left and the right, not what's on the top and the bottom. It says just to trim these 2 spots right here, so get rid of this little bit of extra fabric. We want to change to our green thread, and we're going to stitch out the inner stripe placement line. You want to grab your inner stripe fabric, cover that placement line, and then we'll stitch the tack down. Just like with the pink fabric, we're only going to trim the left and the right. You're going to leave the top and the bottom pieces. We're going to switch to red and stitch out the outer stripes scallop fill. This is the longest stitch out in the embroidery design. You might want to check your bobbin before you start. See if you're near the end, you need a new bobbin. Switch it out now. Let's go ahead and stitch this out. One thing I noticed about that stitch out is the pink fabric underneath frays a little bit, and actually so does this green. You can see some of the fraying. The instructions didn't tell you to add fusible, but I can actually see a little bit of the pink kind of fuzzing through the detail here. So if that's going to bother you, probably a good idea to add some fusible to that pink fabric. That way you don't get those fuzzy edges that are popping up through the stitching. Going to switch to pink and stitch out the outer stripe lines fill. Switch to green and stitch out the inner stripe decorative outline. Next up is the gold metallic thread. Moment of truth here. We'll see how this works. We're going to stitch out the tree detail. I can tell you right now it feels thinner than regular embroidery thread, but it's not shedding at the end. The sulky thread is made up of, I think, 3 individual strands of thread woven together, and it shredded like nobody's business when I tried to use it on the snow place like home tiling scene. It did not work very well at all. It's great for cross stitching and hand embroidery, but my machine really didn't like that. Let's see how this brand does. They look great. Not a single problem with that. Let me show you the thread that I purchased. I did buy it on Amazon. We don't live near any craft stores or quilt stores. This is the brand. It was about $30 for 21 colors. I'm really glad that it's stitched out nice. Otherwise, I'm not sure what I would have done with all of these. During my stitch out, I completely missed step 38 here with flipping this fabric over. After you stitch out your trees, you're going to want to flip your hoop to the back, take the tape off of that backing fabric, flip it over so you can see your zipper, press it, and tape it down. I have my white thread back on my machine. It says neutral color. I'm using white. We're going to stitch the lining tack down. It's going to go down and around our teacup. Next, we're going to stitch out the handle placement lines. It looks like they're going to go over here. It says to use a visible thread. I'm going to use white since there's green fabric here. There's also going to be some stitching right up here. I'm going to go ahead and stitch that out in white. We're going to be placing and taping our handle. I've been trying to do this a couple of times. It keeps moving. They have us start by lining up this part, they're calling this the left tab, with the stitch line here, and then sliding it about 1/8 of an inch. That's because this is going to tack down right here. If all you do is line it up, your handle's going to end up coming right off when you turn it right side out. So you line it up and then slide it over about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to put the tape here because when I tape it, it says tape exactly as shown, but when I do that and I go to work on this part, the tape comes off and the whole thing moves. You want this anchored, you don't want it to move. I'm keeping my tape inside of this stitch line here. We're going to work on this part next, and you can see I've cut my tape down the center. I was having trouble taping it, so I needed to make the tape a little thinner. Grab your loop, we're going to pull it over, and you'll see the stitch line right here that we just stitched out. Line up, they call it the right tab, and then the same thing, you're going to slide it 1/8 of an inch outside of that placement line, and you'll see it kind of comes up and over. They call it a bowed arch. You want to tape this down. That's why I cut the tape in half. I couldn't get a piece in there without cutting it in half. It says to tape it exactly as shown. We've got a piece of tape there, and then it also shows taping across here. We don't want that to get caught as we're working on it. I'm going to add a couple extra pieces of tape just to be sure it's not staying down really well. I am using fresh tape, but we want to keep this from moving around as we attach the next part. And as I'm putting on the tape, this is moving. I need to adjust that. and adjust my tape. This is a little bit fiddly. You're going to want to take some extra time, make sure you've had a snack, have some chocolate, you know, something good before you sit here and fuss with this. Let me look. It looks like it's all lined up. You can always get rid of the extra tape. My tape is going over the zipper. Probably need to cut that off. It shows it with no tape on the zipper, so we'll get rid of the extra. I've got everything taped down. It says to press the tape firmly, then to prevent the handle from becoming caught by the presser foot, fold the bowed arch. See how that's popping up like that? It's an arch. It says to fold it flat and tape it into place. Mine's kind of stiff because we used that wash away. I think I'm going to end up with a crease and I'm going to need to iron that at the end, but let's go ahead and tape it down. I am using quite a bit of tape on this. I don't trust it to not move, and I'm going to check this line again. Moved again. I had to untape everything and get it closer to me so I could see what was going on because everything keeps moving. I'm using an awful lot of tape. I'm getting flashbacks to my ruffled pillow video. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it below. It's good for just the entertainment value. See how this is popping up? Because I taped this flat, so this is popping up. Now this needs to be retaped. Now it doesn't show tape on this side, but I'm going to go ahead and tape it. If a little bit of tape gets caught in my project, that's fine. This needs to be flat. Everything is thoroughly taped into place. We're going to stitch the handle tack down lines. Keep an eye on this one. Let's have a look at that. It did stitch over the tape, but that's okay. Here's the tack down line. What I'm checking is to make sure that it did catch the edge. It feels like it did. And over here, it did. It caught the edges on both. We're going to go remove the tape. When I go to take this part off here and here, I'll probably use some scissors and just kind of trim around it. There's tape that's anchored now underneath the stitches. That's fine. We're going to be putting more fabric on this, and there's going to be a seam here going around. You're never going to see that. It's going to be on the inside of the bag. If you're following along with your instructions, we just finished number 43. We're on 44. It says remove the tape. That's going to be fun because I put all that tape on top of it. Now my handle's all wonky. We're going to have to iron that at the end. All the tape is off. Now it tells us to place our back fabric right side down, covering the entire project. Well, do you see that? You see how that's standing up? Here's where we are. We just did this. It says remove the tape, and it talks about placing the fabric and stitching this line. And then do you see this picture here on 46? Everything is taped again. I'm going to retape it. I don't know why they tell us to remove the tape and then they have the picture with all the tape there. Let's tape down just this part that's sticking out because that's going to make it really difficult to place my back fabric. I need that to be flat so I can place my back fabric. Handle is taped. It says do not open the zipper. Place the back fabric right side down, covering the entire project. Tape into place. Cover the whole thing. Tape into place. I think I'm going to have to get into a new roll of paper tape. We're going to stitch the upper back tack down line. It tells us to remove the tape and to open the zipper and then put everything back and tape it again. So you need to take your tape off, save your tape. We need to open the zipper. I wonder if I can do this without removing all of the tape. We're going to move the zipper pull 3/4 of the way through the project. And then you want to make sure that the zipper pull remains in your project. I'm going to tape this pull down just in case. We don't want that moving around. And then we have to place the back fabric back, fold that back over, and it says to retape everything into place. It's not going to lie flat now because you've got the zipper pull here. One thing I'm checking, because now you've got a bump here and a bump here and your fabric kind of goes up and over, it doesn't lie flat. I want to be sure that the edge of my fabric here is going past any of the stitching that I see there. And it is, but it's close. So you may want to kind of stretch this a little bit. Or if you haven't cut your fabric yet, cut this piece a little bit bigger. Make sure everything is as flat as you can get it. It's all taped into place. We're going to head back over to the machine and stitch the lower back tack down line. It's going to go like this. And it says you may need to raise your presser foot to stitch over the zipper teeth. It has this marked as a neutral thread. I have white thread on my machine still. I'm using the white thread. That line is all stitched out. You probably saw my machine kind of start and stop. I had my finger on the button rather than worrying about raising and lowering the presser foot. I just made sure it went really slow whenever it was going over the zipper. We want to remove our tape. All the tape is removed. We're going to flip our hoop over to the back. The handle is here. It'll be on your right hand side. It says to place the remaining lining fabric right side down, covering the entire project. I still have this over here. I just discovered my mistake. There'll be something in the video giving you the proper directions so you don't do the same thing. This really isn't the end of the world. It's actually not too big a deal. Let's have a look at it and see what's going on. So what do you do if you make a mistake like this? The biggest problem is my zipper's covered because we stitched that line right here, so my zipper's covered. What I'm going to do is trim out this fabric here, and then of course I have to see if I'm going to have another piece of fabric to place over this, because our next step has us placing the other piece of lining fabric. You know, theoretically this should be here and you should be seeing your zipper. And then you would be placing this. And then it's going to stitch another line like this. So if I can get another piece of fabric to cover that, I'm okay. I'm going to start by just cutting this bit out so I can get to the zipper. I've got that fabric removed. You can see if I put it there, let's see, let's line it up. That's really close. I'm thinking, and I have an idea. There's going to be some extra folds in it, and if you open it, it might look weird on the inside. I have some stitch witchery that I'm going to use. Let me get that. I have a couple sizes. I've got a 5/8 inch, and I have this really skinny 1/4 inch that I thought I would never use, and I've actually used a couple of times now. Stitch witchery is a permanent fusible bonding web. This is what it looks like. It's great in a pinch if you rip a hem or something, or maybe you're doing decorative curtains and you just don't want to hem, you can use this. What I'm going to do with this is place it here and fold that over 1/4 inch so that I get a nice clean edge. Then I'll iron that down so it looks like that, and then I'm going to put another piece right here because I've got fabric right here. See this little fabric flap? Rather than cut that off, I'll fuse it to this piece here, so that will cover this raw edge, and then this is a nice clean edge, and then it will be long enough to reach the bottom where it's going to tack down. Here's my piece of fabric. Here's the stitch witchery. I want it as long as this piece of fabric. And I'm going to actually set this aside for just a moment, the piece that I just cut. I want to fold this over 1/4 inch and press. I have this Clover hot hammer ruler. It feels like thick felt, and it's got a 1/4 inch line, so I can make sure I'm pressing 1/4 inch. I kind of want to get it into place first before I place the stitch witchery. Make sure I've got a nice little fold. This is the Oliso mini iron. I have the old version. The handle of the iron, where my hand is, gets really hot. There's newer versions, and I don't think they do that. So you have to be careful with this iron. But it works really well. So that's pressed. Let me take that out. That's going to make it easier for me to put this down. I'll lay that right inside the fold and fold that over. And I think I need to turn this up. I need that to get a little bit hotter. It says to use a steam iron on wool. Honestly, I don't ever use steam with this stuff. It works. You just want to make sure that you don't get it underneath your iron. You can get it off with iron cleaner if you do. It just gets brown and icky. See how that's nice and fused? Now I have a nice clean edge. Let's get our hoop. I have my wool pressing mat, and I've got my project here. This is where it's going to go over this piece. I'm going to place that over the wool pressing mat so I have some support, and I'm going to cut another piece of this, and it's going to go right there. I'll just measure it to the length of my piece. Turn that off. I've got that in place, and I want to place this on top. I had to add another layer, but it's stuck now. It's not going anywhere. Let's head back over to the table. As long as when it stitches the last tack down, it stitches it right about where the batting is, I'll be good. The back of your project looks like that or better than that. You don't have that extra fold there. We're going to grab our remaining lining fabric, right side down, doesn't matter. Cover the entire project, tape the corners in place. Once everything's taped, we're going to go back to the machine and stitch the final outline. This is our last step on the embroidery machine. It's going to go over the zipper again, so keep an eye on it. We're done at the machine. We're going to take this over to the table. You want to remove any and all tape. I don't think I have any tape at all on the front. It's all on the back. Gosh, I hope that caught. Ooh, we can probably peel this up and look. I don't see any of that other fabric. I'm not sure that caught. Let me take off the rest of the tape before I do anything drastic, and let's have a look at it. Let's get in close. I can pull this up. Do you see where the edge of that fabric is? What I'm going to do before I flip this right side out is I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine. I can see that final stitch line there. I'm going to stitch another line, about maybe a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch in. So I want to make sure I tack this down. Let me do that and I'll bring it back and show you. I went ahead and stitched that in beige thread so you'd be able to see it. Here's the original line from the embroidery machine, and I went in 1/4 of an inch. So my little teacup's gonna look a little squatty, but that's okay. Now when I pull this piece up, here's that lining. I don't think this got caught here. This line is going to catch it. You want to take off all your tape if you haven't done that already, and we're going to remove the project from the hoop. It says to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance and trim all the layers around the project, but not to trim the top edge of the zipper tape. Don't trim here. So we're going to trim a 1/4 inch away around like that. I probably should have cut the top before I cut the sides off because you could have lined up a ruler and cut off the top. It says to clip corners to reduce bulk. I don't really see any corners. Maybe down here. You can check if you've got corners here. There's the zipper tape though, so I don't want to trim the zipper tape. I'll just leave that. Carefully turn the project through the opening in the lining to expose the inside of the zipper pouch. Right here. Carefully. Hoping that it doesn't come apart. Wow. Another small opening with lots of thick stuff. If you've watched my videos before, you know how I feel about turning things right side out through small openings. Not a big fan. You just have to squish it. And there's no way around it. You're going to have to squish it and go ahead and push it through. Oh, we're almost done. And if I hadn't made a mistake, we would have finished before the construction trucks got here. Some of the trucks just got here. Well, there's probably going to be a little bit of noise. Finish turning that around. I'm probably going to have to get a point turner, and I may have to trim off some of this extra. Here's the bottom. Look, hooray! I'm really glad I stitched that extra seam. I know mine's going to look a little bit different because I stitched a 1/4 inch in, so it's going to be a little squatty, but that's all right. So take your time, get your corners poked out on this, flip it back if you need to, and trim away any extra. It tells us to fold in the raw edges of the lining opening. That's right here. Using a needle and thread, hand sew the opening closed. I usually throw these on the sewing machine. It's going to stitch through the back of the project, and when I flip it right side out, you're going to see a stitch line. You probably need to open your zipper the whole way too. If you've got your zipper taped down like I did, I taped the zipper pull down so I wouldn't stitch over it. I'm going to remove that piece of tape. That's better. See? Slide that all the way over. And now I can fold that under. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I'm wondering if I can just go put some more of that stitch witchery on that and iron that down. Because this is the lining. It's going to be on the inside, and then it's ironed down. It'll stay, and you won't see anything on the outside. I'm going to try it. I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. It looks about as neat as it would look if I hand sewed it closed. Once you've got that folded and stitched closed, or iron closed, or glue gun closed, or I don't know, double-sided tape, super glue, whatever you got, it says to turn it right side out through the open zipper. Use a pressing cloth, press the project well. I'm going to turn it right side out and I'll press it and we'll bring it back and we'll see what it looks like. You ready for the reveal? Here's a couple things. I have a lot of bulk up here. I didn't do good trimming away the extra above the zipper line because it said not to trim, so I left extra, so it's a little bulky right there. You can see that. I did have to iron this flat because we had it all bent and taped, but it does iron flat. Looks good from the back. Let's take a look at the front. Unbelievably, it came out great. I almost can't believe it. If you didn't know what I did here from the front, you really wouldn't know. If you look at the picture, you can see there's more of this white fabric here at the bottom than on mine, but it looks fine. It's not a big deal. I was shocked. You can open it. You can see my funny job on the lining, and I do have some extra lining on one side because of the way that that worked out. I've got a little bit of folds in there. It worked. I didn't have to cut fabric from my other pink fabric. I was able to utilize what I had with the box just by making that slight adjustment at the bottom. If you've got any stray threads, go ahead and trim those off. This is ready to use. I may even elect to open this up and put a bunch of polyfill in here, kind of make it look nice and round, like a nice full cup, and then set it on display with the rest of my Christmas stuff. Let me know if you make this project and how yours turns out. Thank you for joining me in making the Teacup Zipper Pouch from the Feeling Festive Bella Box. I hope this video is helpful. Please let me know. Leave me a comment below. Coming up soon should be the applique of the month. As soon as it gets shipped and it gets here, we'll be working on this one right here with the shamrocks. Please check out the other videos on my channel. I have new videos up using the Well Wishes designs, showing you how to stitch out the cinched sacks. I stitch out Shine Bright and Happy Birthday. And there's lots of videos for Hoop Studio, Perfectly Pieced, and other Kimberbell projects. For Perfectly Pieced, I'm hosting a mystery quilt along. I'll make sure those playlists are linked below. You can check out all those videos. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.